Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I decided to speak about how to hear God's voice. I always tell people that God spoke to me or I felt God speaking to me, and a lot of people have asked me, did you actually hear an audible voice? And no, I didn't actually hear an audible voice, but I knew that it was God speaking to me. So how do we hear from God? Imagine that I'm vacuuming, the dishwasher's on, the TV's on, all these different things of noise are on, and I'm trying to say something to my husband. He's not going to hear me. He's going to turn everything off, and then he's going to say, okay, now what did you say? In our lives, many times, other people's opinions speak louder than what God is speaking to us. Society may be speaking something to you louder than what God is speaking to you. So how do we hear from God? First, we need to shut off all distractions. Other people's opinions, what society tells you, your friends. Shut off all outside noise and focus on what God is trying to speak to you. How do you know if it's God speaking to you? In John chapter 10, Jesus is speaking about how the sheep know the shepherd's voice and they follow the shepherd because they know it's his voice, but they will not follow a stranger because they don't know the stranger's voice. How do we know if it's God's voice? If there would be a lineup of women and I'd be blindfolded and I'd have to hear which one is my mom's voice, I think we can all know which would be our mom's voice. Because we've heard it so often. Our whole lives we've heard our mom's voice. Even if we would be blindfolded, we would still know which one would be our mother. Why? Because we're familiar with the voice. Jesus is saying that the sheep know the shepherd's voice because they're familiar with it. They've heard it for so long. What Jesus will speak to you will not always gratify your flesh, not always please your flesh. When I felt God speaking me to go into missions, I knew that it was God telling me and speaking to me because I knew it wouldn't gratify my flesh. It wouldn't make me feel better being in a third world country where I can't take hot showers, where I can't have whatever food I want, I can't go to fast food, I can't do all these things. That doesn't gratify my flesh. Where there's no air conditioning, like that's not something that I would want for myself, but rather it was God's desire in me. Again in John chapter 10, Jesus says that I am the good shepherd. I have come to give life and to give it abundantly. The enemy has come to steal, kill, and destroy. What God will speak will not be for destruction, but it would be for life. God won't speak condemnation, but he will speak conviction. He may convict you if the sin you are doing is not pleasing to him, or he may convict you that what you did was not okay, but he won't condemn you for it. The Bible says that God sent his son Jesus not to condemn the world, but to save the world. I remember once I had a really big pain in my stomach, and I was like, okay, well, I'll pray for it, and I know God can heal me. And before I began praying, I immediately had this thought, who are you to pray? Don't you know what you've done? Don't you know who you were? Like, what gives you any right to pray to God to heal you? And immediately I knew that was not Jesus's voice. That was not God's voice. That was the enemy's voice condemning me to my past. But I knew that I was bought with the blood. I knew that I was cleansed of all my sin. And so I rebuked the enemy and I received that healing in the end. Jesus wants to speak to you today. But what he's asking of you is to let go of every distraction. Let go of people's thoughts and what people think about you and people want from you, and to do whatever he has asked you to do. Jesus wants you to be familiar with his voice, to know that he's the one leading you, to not think that it's the enemy or something. He wants you to know that it's the good shepherd that's leading his sheep. He wants you to be familiar with his voice. How do you be familiar with his voice? Is by being around him, by being in communion with him. Back in the day, I don't do this anymore, but I used to prank call people. And I couldn't use my real voice because I knew that they would know who I was. So what would I do? I would disguise my voice and they would have no idea who I was. You won't be familiar with the voice that you've never heard before. You'll be familiar with the voice that you've heard day and day, and you get that through communion with the person. Maybe God is trying to speak something to you today, but you're so distracted by what other people are saying. You are so distracted that you can't hear what he's trying to tell you. I pray that this video speaks to someone and that you will learn to listen to God's voice and to know that it is God that is speaking to you. So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys